already have two prepared.
Good afternoon. Not on? Well, then why didn't anybody respond? Good afternoon, DML. Are we here? Okay. Hopefully we saw some good things, heard some good things, met some good people, found some good hideout spots when you skipped a session. Glad to have you in the room. My name is Sybil Madison-Boyd. I'm with Digital Youth Network, which is at Northwestern University in the School of Education and Social Policy, Office of Community Education Partnerships. I'm really happy to be here. I guess I'm the host of our Ignite Talks. Yeah, woo! Come on! And I'm really excited because every year that I've come to DML, the folks who do the Ignite Talks have been my heroes, because I'm like, wow, who signs up for that? And it's really amazing, because in 5 minutes, these brilliant people are going to squish their great ideas into a presentation for you that hopefully is going to spark some interest, some enthusiasm, some new ideas. These are creative people, and they also know how to talk slow but fast in the time frame that they have. So really happy to be here. We have some great talks about how we're using the online space and gaming and digital tools to support learning. We're going to be hearing about virtual reality, about video games, I think graphic novels, puppets, nasty women, and vaccinations. So it's going to be really exciting, and it's the only thing between you and our opening reception. So I know that you're ready to give these folks some love, but just to make sure, and because we've been walking around all day and maybe a little tired, and you didn't respond right away when I said good afternoon, so an intervention is needed. We're going to warm this place up and have our folks feel really good about coming up on this stage and the bravery and courage that takes by using our bodies, our minds, and our voices. So yes, you're going to do a little risk-taking. They shouldn't be the only ones. Stand up. Take it out. Move a little bit. Oh, hey. All right. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Do a little Dougie. Anybody got some Dougie? Come on. Okay. Now, you might want to close your eyes. You don't have to, but I went to grad school at Berkeley. I'm a little crunchy. You might want to close your eyes and think about something that made you smile today. we started off with that great talk from Dana. That might have made you smile, but something between then and now that's made you smile. Think about it. Embody it. Get that smile that you had when it happened on your face. These happy thoughts are warming up the room. Now, the one last thing we're going to do before we kick it off is when that thing made you smile, you might have had an audible, maybe not. But imagine what your audible would have been when that happened. So for example, I had a very special friend come to be with me today, and my audible was, wowza. Okay? So think about what your audible is. Take a couple seconds. Whether it was the one that you actually, emitted from your mouth, or it just represents what that happy thing was. And on the count of 3, we're going to put that audible in this room, right? We're going to just emit our happiness for these wonderful people who are then going to get up and wowza us with their Ignite talks, okay? Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Wowza! All right, I think we're ready for Ben.
All right, I got a lot of nervous energy, so I'm going to be moving around here. All right, my name's Ben Miller, and I'm here to talk to you about preventing pain and distress during needle pokes. Did you know that over 90% of kids show distress during routine immunizations, and that more than 3 in 5 kids have a fear of needles? I can speak for everyone when I say pain sucks. It doesn't just suck in the moment. Have you ever stubbed your toe, had the pain fade away, and then tell somebody about it later? See, it's pervasive, and it has long-term negative consequences if it's left untreated. Long-term negative consequences include things like fear and anxiety related to the procedure, which can increase aversion to seeking medical treatment in the future. Do you know that guy who acts all tough but then refuses to go see a doctor? Yeah, maybe he just got poked one too many times without any comfort. Now, there are things that help. There are topical anesthetics and creams that we can put on that can help numb the areas before the procedure. But they're costly, they take time to be effective, and they're not always available. Even when they are, they do little to reduce the fear and anxiety kids have related to the poke. But that's where distraction coaching comes in. It's a clinical intervention that takes the child's focus away from the procedure onto something more fun, like toys, games, books, activities. It turns procedure time into playtime. And there's a lot of great research that backs it up. You can see here, it's clinically proven to reduce distress, reduce anxiety, and increase compliance with the procedures. And not only is it good for the kids, it's also good for the medical staff too, because it helps to keep kids compliant, which reduces the need for repeated pokes and decreases the overall procedure time. Now, there are professional distraction coaches known as child life specialists, and they're available in large pediatric hospitals, but they're not always available in those smaller clinical settings like community health centers, doctors' offices, but that's okay, because we have parents, and we know that from more research that we can train them to be distraction coaches in just under 10 minutes. You see the mom here, she's teaching her son how to breathe while also engaging him with an iPad. That works for everybody. Now, child life specialists, they carry around a whole bunch of toys like bubbles and light spinners and stress balls, I Spy books, and Where's Waldo? And in the field, or in the field, we call these tools, but in academia, we refer to them as tangibles. Now, not everybody can carry a whole big bag around, tangibles around with them, so that's why we have an equally powerful tool in our pocket, the smartphone. Seriously, they come with us everywhere, so they're always on hand, and look how excited this kid is to play with it. Now, like I said, they come anywhere, they capture attention, they're super portable, they're really easy to maneuver around, and they promote cooperative play between a parent and child, which helps to keep them engaged. Also, if there's a little spit or blood that gets on there, they have glass screens so it can easily be wiped clean. Now, in order to harness the power of these, you need to do 3 things. You need to attract, you need to invest, and you need to scaffold. You need to attract their interest to that device, invest your interest, and then scaffold the interactions so they can play. Number 1, attract them to the media. So before the procedure begins, figure out what interests them. Is it SpongeBob or is it Dora? Okay, but then do they want to watch a movie or play a game with it? While you're figuring that out, find it on your device, and before the procedure begins, you can see what's there. Then once the procedure begins, when they start positioning the child for it, put the device in front of them so they can be attracted and have it full front and center. Find those really fun games with the bright lights and things that'll keep them engaged. Then invest your interest. Maybe you don't know what your kid's playing, but it's a great time to find out. Start asking questions. Be like, oh, wow, what are they running from? Do the laws of gravity even apply here? That way they show that you're interested, and it gets them engaged as well. And also, while you're watching them play, respond to what's happening on screen. Say, wow, that's amazing. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. Look at that high score. As you're getting them engaged and showing your interest, it helps to keep the focus on the device and not on the needle. Then 3, scaffold their interactions. Some kids may not know how to use the devices. Even though they're pretty accustomed to them, you might have to show them specific skills like dragging, zooming, swiping, tapping, all those things to interact. And also remember, they're only going to have use of one of their arms, so you may have to be a surrogate for them. And then also scaffold their interactions by telling them what's coming up ahead. Warn them about the bad guys that are going there, because even if they're looking at it, part of their mind is focused on that needle with their name on it. So you may need to help them out so you both can win and stay invested in it. So here are the things you want to avoid. Stuff with a lot of text, a lot of ads that distract from the fun. You really want to look for those things that quickly restart after losing a life. They have lots of stages that are good for different kids. And then also all that stuff that's silly or stupid that makes us laugh, giggle, and smile. If you want a clinical prediction of how distressed your child might be during their next needle poke, come get your distressment from us at the University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital, or Google Distraction in Action today. Thank you.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm that guy, by the way. And we're going to see if we can break the model just a little bit here. This should be fun. When you log into any game, there's a matriculation. You create your character, your avatar, you give it an identity, a look. Are you human? Are you alien? Maybe a robot? I like robot. You discover your mission, that overarching quest, that thing you need to accomplish. You're entering into the hero's journey. You're in the ordinary world and called to adventure. You meet with the mentor, the seasoned traveler who gives training and equipment, advice, prepares you for your journey. A marquee moment in a great video game, and of course the hero's journey, is this crossing over the threshold, leaving the ordinary world and entering the extraordinary. It's here where the identity is defined, or, in some cases, selected. And in modern narrative games, in MMOs, it's selecting who you'll be, a warrior, a hero, a leader. It determines the lens that you're going to view the entire story and the part you'll play in it. This isn't a regular video game. It's a graduate course that plays like a video game. It's at the heart of experiential learning, using game design to create an authentic, situated, and personally relevant experience. Games and game-based learning methods use quests, individual missions that allow you to learn and accomplish something. They utilize raids, social accomplishments, and a shared task, a learning activity. Growth is represented in ranks, increased social status. Classes distribute both responsibility and specialization. Rewards like badges, achievements, and awards describe a player's experience. And loot makes repetitive tasks easier. These are the characteristics in game design which make these experiences meaningful. And when you place them into a structure like a class, they make the experience immersive. The crew, as you see here, goes about their jobs, completing simple quests, conversing with one another, relative unstructured play, and then the alarm sounds. There's a distress signal. A ship is pulled in, carrying an interesting character and some valuable cargo. It turns out that Rafa Koster here is a learning scientist. She's brought with her all these artifacts that deal with different theorists in games and play. Each of these are investigated to find out what they have to do with the theories of Caillois, Saylor, and Zimmerman, and others. They need to digest these and communicate them to one another. They use this learning to create their own personalized description of games and play. They're definitions. They converse. When does unstructured play become play? When does it become a game? What characteristics have to be in place? They unpack the subject in that authentic, situated, and personally relevant way. And the experience is important for both the avatar and the player. So this is at the core of playful learning, the opportunity to experience something and then make it personal. The knowledge and experience they're generating feeds back to the character. But then, like a good game, something strange happens. The guest turns into an alien. They find a strange orb, and then they start to turn into aliens one by one. And now we have a big game of alien tag, right? But pedagogically, it puts to test their own personal test of play and game in an authentic, situated, and personally relevant way. It's a playful experience. This is class as an MMO. And it requires three things. You can do it. You need a game space, you need a game-based learning management system, and a game-based curriculum. A game space is any game space that you use. An LMS is any one that gives them choice. And the curriculum, those are the things that you decide are important to experience. This is all that's required. That's the only thing you need to play class as an MMO. This is a game I teach, class I teach at Boise State University, and if you want an opportunity to download the full graphic novel that I built with a tool called Comic Life, you're welcome to it. You can also get a copy of it on my school website, dochaskell.com. But mostly I'm excited to see the games that you create. Send them to me. Thank you.
All right, I'm way more frenetic than both of the earlier two, so we'll see how this goes. My name is Trent Hergenrader. I'm from the Rochester Institute of Technology. I'm going to be talking about this project called Steampunk Rochester. It's 3 different courses that takes place over 1 academic year. The basic idea is that we're creating an alternate history of Rochester that's set in the early 1920s. The late 19th century, early 20th century in Rochester is a really interesting time. We've got figures like Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, Georgia Eastman. We've got social issues of immigration, suffragist movement, prohibition, labor demonstrations, spiritualism, World War I, progressive politics, and more. The first course is Imagining Rochester, which is taught by my colleague Jessica Lieberman. It's a course in visual culture, and she looks at the city as a text. They go on field trips, they explore the history of the city, and they identify significant cultural and historical locations. My class is game-based fiction. It is an advanced fiction class. It blends aspects of world building and role-playing games, where I bring in the genre of steampunk. We build parts of the world, we build out characters, and then the students explore the world through their role-playing game sessions as characters. The third course is Research Studio, which is taught by Professor Steve Jacobs in Interactive Games and Media. This course takes place in the spring. It is a project-based course where students break up a project into teams, and then they're supposed to build stuff. They're supposed to have a shippable product by the end of this semester. So the concept here is that visual culture is going to be doing historical stuff. Game-based fiction does steampunk and world building. Together we populate a wiki with people, places, and things that becomes a repository from which the students in the game design studio draw from. Our agenda here is that we're trying to make a working prototype of a game. Originally, we thought that this was going to be like an online narrative like Fallen London, but now we're leaning towards an augmented reality and interactive fiction. In Imagining Rochester, in year 1, they went to sites of union demonstrations, women's rights marches. They went to the old campus of the Mechanics Institute, which is where RIT came from. And we pinned these locations to a map of 1915 Rochester. There's no highway going through here. The Erie Canal goes straight through the center of town. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, now I'm at that slide. Sorry, I got it screwed up here. So there's no highway cutting through the city. The Erie Canal still goes through the center of town. The white icons here are locations that are actually historical locations. The dark ones are fictional locations. And this gives us a shape of the city in the 20th century. In my game-based fiction course, we created catalogs of people, places, and things. Mostly are fictional. Some are quasi-historical. Some are purely historical. We try to consider the era from multiple perspectives of race, class, and gender, and try and role-play to simulate daily interactions that these characters would have experienced in this world. The 2 courses combined to write hundreds of wiki entries, so many that we kind of had to identify the most notable ones, the ones that were done the best. We've got over 60 entries, and we're only to the letter C here on the bottom. And then this is the material from which students had to draw from when they were doing their role role-playing game campaigns. For the research studio in spring, several students from my fiction class took this research studio. This was both a blessing and a curse because they knew a lot about it, but they also had a sense of ownership in which they really they resisted changes, their suggestions that other students had made. So they made a point-and-click adventure game. One of the big problems that we noted right away is that the on-ramp to Steampunk Rochester was way too long for them to do that and create a game over 15 weeks to get working with decent art and other design aspects. Year 2, we brought the visual culture and the fiction course way closer together. We worked together for 7 weeks, focused much more on specific progressive politics and the Rochester subway system, and we had more concise wiki entries and less sprawl, which overall was good. When we had the research studio in the spring, there were very few programmers. There were more UI designers. They researched storytelling platforms, and again, even though we shortened that ramp to getting on to Steampunk Rochester, it was still too long, but the research did point us to ARGs, which is where we're moving to now. We want to use Twine this year. It was much more utilitarian. Wait a minute. Yeah, the visual culture students are concentrating only on locations. The game-based fiction students are only focusing on story structure, procedural narrative, branching narrative, and we're using Twine, where each one of these boxes is a narrative choice. These are going to be mapped onto individual city locations, so we can do a walking tour where the choices are going to lead you through different locations in the city. So the research studio is going to be giving 4 or 5 branching narratives. The only way that they're going to learn about Steampunk Rochester is by reading these stories. They're going to use Eris or some other locative narrative software to pin these choices to downtown locations. The idea is that these stories will be shown from different perspectives. We may have one character who is a high society member, one character who is an immigrant street urchin. Your phone buzzes, you pull it up, you'll get a little interactive narrative that'll tell you to walk 2 blocks east if you want to do this, walk 3 blocks west if you want to do this, and it will take you through important locations in the city. So at the end here, what we want to do, if this works, is approach either the Rochester Jazz Fest or other cultural or corporate sponsors to fund artwork and development, and who knows, ideally we could package it so we could steampunk your city within a few years. All right, thank you very much.
Cool. Okay. Hi, so I'm Erin Hoffman-John, and I come from Carnegie Mellon University's ETC program, and we come from the future, the ETC does. We're very lucky to be able to set master's students at attacking problems in design that we think will be dominant technologies in 2 to 3 years. So ETC comes from the future, but I come from the past. This is a text-based game called Dragon Realms and also one called Pern Mush. These were connected learning online communities that taught me to be a game designer when I was 15 years old. I went on to then do about 16 years in games and then come back to teach. So what people will tell you about text-based games, this is Zork, and these are the many ways that you can be killed by a GRU. And people who remember these games mainly remember that they fought with the parser. It was this constant, like, trying to remember the right thing to type at the right time, and usually you died. But the games were really magical when they did work, because when you did communicate with the computer in a way that the computer communicated back, it felt magical, almost like this sort of telekinetic connection to an author who had created this, and you thought to do the thing that the author wanted you to do. So that makes me think of these things. These are in-home devices where you talk to it, it talks back, and usually you're trying to find the magic word, and it's really frustrating. So I thought that maybe we could take this technology and actually apply some very old game design techniques to it. But in my sort of to explain, I will throw a text parser at almost any problem. This was a history game that I made with Matt Farber for 6th grade. There he is, yeah, to teach about the revolution. And also my friend Christina Woodkey, who when we taught undergrads using Inform said, I think you could use that on voice command interfaces. So when I got to Carnegie Mellon, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take voice command interfaces, throw them into VR, use Inform type text parser, really old design techniques, and kind of see what happened. And they said, that's a really weird idea, but I guess you can try to do that. So this was the team that we inflicted it on. Is Andrew here? You can actually play this in the tech showcase right after this, and I hope that you do. They made a cooking game of sorts where you communicate and collaborate with a robot. You have to teach the robot words for the alien fruits that they have and then fulfill those orders for customers. We thought that you would be able to just take the Google Home, the Alexa, and throw it into Unity and it would be fine. It was super not fine. They actually had to create a completely different tech stack. And the thing that's important to remember then if you're trying to do something like this is voice command isn't just one technology. It's actually 3 technologies. You have to first be able to, that's a little black, but you have to be able to take voice, turn it into text, then parse that text intelligently, and then render that text back out to speech. So that's actually 3 different things that you have to do.
Do you know what this is?
I don't know.
This is
I
a
don't
game.
It's an
know.
apple. Say
Apple.
Say
Apple.
apple. Say
Apple.
Good.
Apple. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you give me the apple? Can you give me the apple? Thank you. Thank you.
So this was their first prototype. It was really magical, and people got really into it as soon as they were in the space. It actually made the VR experience about 10 times more immersive than VR already is. Because if you can't talk, you're going to feel lonely, and I think that's a big part of why VR experiences feel so lonely. But the girl was a bit of a trap. She was actually maybe a little bit too effective. I think this slide might be stuck, actually. Yeah, it's hung up on the end of the video. Oh, no. Yeah, I know. I guess I could just tell you a long story now, right? Yeah. But the prototype that they built was super effective, super fast, which was very surprising. But the girl was almost a little bit of a trap because she was really compelling. You emotionally connected with her right away. Oh, was I supposed to fix it? Okay. This is live testing. Okay, I think it's going to go back to what it was doing. So the students actually automatically created this experience where you're teaching an AI, and they weren't told to create something educational or even something that might be leveraged for education. Again, like I said, the girl was a little bit too effective because you connected with her, but then you kind of were able to quickly find the edges in the AI and realize that she wasn't real. So the students ultimately decided to change that character into a robot, which it might be more understandable from a user perspective that you couldn't really tell it the right things. These were some of the lessons that they took away. They really learned a lot about the affordances of English language in a fully digital environment, and also some really interesting things about player behaviors and social norms and when you would break a social norm and when you would kind of obey what the expectations were. The really important thing is that you can't separate language from context. If you try to have a context-free language interaction, you get gobbledygook. So you can't, if you're going to make a voice command experience or even any kind of text-based experience, you can't separate that design process from the creation of the environment in which it's going to take place. The other thing is that these technologies really aren't quite ready yet, and so we aim at the future. We knew it was going to be hard, and they just kind of suffered with it. But we do think that eventually it'll get there as each of these 3 technologies gets deeper and more advanced. So the other thing that VR is missing by nature is nonverbal cues, and we communicate so much through language without words. So, but one thing you can do in VR is actually pay attention to what the player is looking at. And if you branched your narrative and branched your text parser based on what the player was looking at, you could get a really immersive experience. They also created this debugging tool that when you speak, it actually prints out what you're saying. And that all by itself, I think, is a really interesting both learning and game experience where you're sort of painting with words without, you're not normally paying attention to what you're saying. And ultimately, they did create a teachable agent. And anybody who's familiar with Dan Schwartz's work knows that this is actually a really, really effective way to teach. So I think in addition to uncovering a way of making VR way more immersive and solving some affordance problems, they also found some new ways to teach. So again, with many thanks to the Sweet Talk team, and I hope that you go and play it in the tech showcase, that was their project. Yeah. Sorry, I ended early, I guess.
Hi, I'm Juliette Levy, and I'm not from Irvine. I'm actually at Riverside. I teach history, and my Twitter handle is Prof. Juliette. There's a mistake there, but everything else, as far as I know, is true. And I teach history to a lot of students, and by a lot, I mean like 100 and 150 students, and when I teach online, I teach about 200 students. And to solve some problems of sort of teaching complex things to a lot of people, I developed a game, and that's the game. And it was a game that got students into the library and got them to sort of understand the architecture of and the hierarchy of information in a library. And it was really effective at getting them to use libraries, but it wasn't so good at getting them to sort of engage critically with what the libraries provided them. And so that's where we kind of fell off the cliff. And I was dealing with the conundrum of how to teach critical thinking to a large group of students when I had my first VR experience. I was underwater, and this whale floated by me. And I could see it looked at me. There were other fish, and as the whale sort of swam away, I swayed with it because it made the wreck that apparently I was standing on move. And days and weeks and still today, when I think about that whale, I think I was actually in the water. And I realized that what I needed to do with my students is I needed to get them underwater. I needed them to experience critical thinking. And to that end, I reached out to my friend Tony Schlesky, who used to work at Intel Research Labs and is a VR pioneer, especially when it comes to VR in sort of non-gaming environments. And I tasked her team. I said, you know, we have to figure out a way to sort of teach students how to read critically in a text. And I gave them a text by Che Guevara that students inevitably just sort of read and pass by and I can't get them to think about it effectively and quickly in the 10-week quarters that we have. And the task was, they need to be able to sort of read this and understand it. We need to be able to do this sort of in a platform-agnostic way. I don't know what technology my university is going to buy. I don't know what technology they have, and I don't know what technology is going to exist in 6 months, let alone 6 years. So the platform needs to be, doesn't matter. It needs to be a system that we can replicate, because at some point I'll want to teach something else, and maybe somebody else would like to use this. And so we needed to have sort of a system that could be sort of replicated and where we could easily plug information in. I wanted it to be flexible. I needed it to be sustainable. I have experienced too many great DH projects that just die because, you know, the platform that it was on just doesn't exist anymore. And so the key really was to make it light. And so we used Unity, because at this stage that was really sort of the platform that we could use on, and that has worked relatively well. There's some downsides to it, and today I learned about another context in which we could start coding VR experience for my students. But what it led to was that we had a pretty game-like immersive environment. And I like games. I developed one. I think students learn complicated things better in games, and so we have, this is one of the screens that it starts with. So this is the environment in which students get placed, and we started testing it at UC Riverside. We've had 2 tests so far. We've had about 160 people do the experience, students, colleagues, library staff, pretty much anyone who is willing to sort of put the headset on and not throw up. And really the key was, you know, could we create an immersive experience? Could we create one that generated critical thinking? And could we create an experience that had applicable lessons in real life? And the answer is, well, yes to the first, yes to the second, and possibly to the last, right? It was immersive. Students and anybody who put the goggles on stayed in there much longer than we expected. There was critical thinking. I tested it in sort of assignments and exams afterwards, and there's sort of a clear difference between those that did the VR experience and those that didn't. In real life, we don't know. Now, the outcomes, text in VR is really bad. Like, don't put text in VR yet, that doesn't work. Soundscapes are really, really great, and I just realized that I'd never thought of sound as something really important. It makes that distraction-free zone that VR is even more immersive. People stayed in there for 20 minutes. I thought I had 3 minutes worth of content in the experience. They wouldn't leave. It was profound in ways that I still haven't quite figured out how to measure. Pre and post exercises were amazing on critical thinking and on multiple other levels that we still need to figure out how to sort of ask the right questions about. But sort of the conclusion is, VR is a space for critical engagement, right? It's not just for gaming, it's not just for entertainment. It will be a great place to teach people things that we don't necessarily associate with VR. It's a tool that I look forward to using more, and I need more content. So if you have a text that you would like to explore in VR, come talk to me, and let's see if we can build something around it. More VR. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hey. So Desa Kalapatra. This means place, time, context. It's a Balinese concept. It's about putting human activity into the world and nature, and of interacting with forces greater than ourselves. In a connected learning frame, I think of Desa Kalapatra as about responsiveness and also connections to community. In this, I think it underscores the way that place, time, and context affect any performance, including learning. In 2010, I had a chance to go to Bali to study puppetry. I was there, I brought a student's excitement, but as an educator, I also had a teacher's curiosity about what our teachers would emphasize or not during our time with them. In the book Voices from Bali, music teacher Amade Tempe Pasek talks about teaching as you learn and the importance of externalizing your knowledge to share and learn as you teach. he talks about in Bali that it's not about learning this song or that particular dance, but instead on learning the strange and subtle aspects of practice, and really how art lives. This idea that art lives was very present for me during my time there. Everyone I met was engaged in some sort of artistic practice, and I was there to study puppetry, but I was introduced to a wide range of art forms that were fundamentally interconnected. My teachers were puppeteers or dalang, but they were makers, dancers, singers, poets, gamelan players, mass performers, and they could be any of these things at any time when the play's context was right and they were needed. So this idea of being responsive to community needs as an artist, for me, was about a shared purpose in the arts there. And I also felt like I saw elements of a connected learning ecosystem. I was then really excited, kind of geeked out, then to find the writing of Ainayam Sadhana. He's a Balinese scholar and dalang, and he writes about how he learns. He studied Petalangan. This is the study of that a puppeteer must master. So he compares Petalangan study in a traditional community-based setting with study of Petalangan at the university, where he now teaches. In a traditional study, he talks about how the young dalang must first fall in love with the puppets and approach puppetry as entertainment and play. From there, the young learner starts to learn the practical aspects of the art and really grapple more with its underlying meaning. The learner learns by doing and also in context, and the learner is responsible for their own learning. They're encouraged to ask questions and then develop their practice through these questions. The teacher is a mentor and a resource. The ultimate goal is to perform then from an understanding of literature and philosophical study and connect that to the realities of the audience's life. Doing the performance in its place, time, and context will make the difference, Sadhana tells us. In formal study, however, theory and practice are more isolated from each other. So theory is taught through lectures and readings. Practice is more talked about, written about, and thought about. Also, in the university setting, things are more secular, less connected to community, but learners get to study with a range of dalangs. They learn tons of different techniques and styles. This was not possible in a traditional setting. At the university, too, Petalangan study is open to more of a diversity of learners. This includes women as well as men of unconnected families. And innovations can really thrive quickly in this environment. However, Sadhana talks about how when we move from traditional practice, instruction and curriculum get more separated from place, time, and context. In this way, the onus of learning shifts from being focused on the learner and becomes more focused on the teacher. So in a striving to rebalance learner agency and also connections to community, Sadhana encourages artists to document as they work the underlying philosophy and concepts of their work. We focus on this too at the National Writing Project. At the National Writing Project, we teach as we learn, and we learn as we teach, and we're very focused on bringing practice and theory together to share the underlying concepts of our work. This is how we stay responsive, how we get to the strange and subtle aspects of our practice that connect all learning to its particular place, time, and context. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brittany DeLacy. I've been an active knitter since I was about 4 years old. It started when my grandmother handed me a pair of knitting needles and said, okay, you're gonna learn, here's how you cast on, make a scarf. So I did, I ran with it. And recently I have become really interested in how online has been popularizing this craft that had seemed dead for a while. I have turned to online communities to help me hone my skills, to help me develop skills further than what my grandmother could teach me. It's becoming really popular, and it's becoming something for everyone. Knitting is no longer something that your aunt just does to knit you an embarrassingly ugly sweater. It's something that everyone can do now. There's crafts for everyone, ranging from socks, ranging from different things that we will get into a little bit in this presentation a little later on. People are also taking knitting to new extremes with things like yarn bombing, which is essentially knitting sweaters for trees to beautify spaces, knitting sweaters for other things in public spaces as well, such as fire hydrants and other things you'll find. So it's been really interesting. People are turning to these online platforms to find tutorials to teach them how to knit. So for example, this English mesh lace stitch, you need to know yarn overs, you need to know how to knit, you need to know stitches such as slip, slip, stitch. You need a wide range of skills. That might sound complicated, but legitimately anyone can knit. There's videos online to help you. There's all these different platforms. There's things ranging from sweaters to scarves to different things. There's something out there for everyone. You can knit no matter what you do. Geek culture is even becoming popular in knitting nowadays. Type in Star Wars knitting or crocheting patterns into any search engine, and you will be given a multitude of different patterns out there. It's popular among Doctor Who fans, it's popular among Harry Potter fans, it's popular everywhere. Pop culture has also been really helpful in popularizing knitting as well. This is a scene from Gilmore Girls in which they were having a knit-a-thon to help rebuild this old bridge that got squandered by the character of Christopher donating money, and the knit-a-thon stopped. So other ways, where are people going to knit? This is an online community called Ravelry for knitters. And it's essentially a social media platform for knitters. There's forums, there's comment spaces, there's patterns, there's tutorials, there's videos. Super helpful. It's also becoming popular in other social media forms. So this was a hashtag challenge on Instagram, hashtag Operation Sock Drawer, which challenged knitters to replace socks in their sock drawer with ones they knit themselves. It became really popular. People became really interested in it on Instagram. It's nowadays becoming really popular for things such as political activism. People are now turning to this to educate others about political activism. So the online community is educating others how to knit, and then in turn these knitters are educating others about their political issues in their society. This isn't a new thing. This woman here, Rose Worfman, in World War II, she was knitting in concentration camps, and she was knitting for resistance. She knitted knots and socks for Nazis just big enough that they wouldn't be able to wear them. So, and then nowadays there's even projects like this, Micro Revolt, which was a quieter protest where people knitted these army hats, army helmets for soldiers who had died in Iraq and sent them to senators to show the weight of the war. And so with all of this, the Pussy Hat Project became a thing, and I'm sure you guys have heard of it, seen it. It's been everywhere. It's been in major news outlets. It was launched on November 21st after Donald Trump was elected president. Their goal was to have a sea of pink at the Women's March in January. It's been everywhere. It appeared in political cartoons. It even appeared in fire hydrants. I know it's hard to see, but it was everywhere. So it became popular through different means, different social media. Celebrities helped popularize it. Whoopi Goldberg helped popularize it. Kristen Ritter helped popularize it. Kristen Ritter even had a social media following where she detailed out her steps on making the hat. She was friends with the people who started the movement, so people who were fans of these celebrities helped spread the movement. Because they became so popular, stores ran out of pink yarn. There is no pink yarn anywhere between November and January, and it's still becoming a crisis in some yarn stores where people are continuing to knit these hats. So they did get their sea of pink. People went out to the march. They wore these hats. They educated others about their political issues and their political values. It became a success. And the creators thought, what else can we do besides the Women's March to keep people politically activated? So they have these welcome blankets now, and their goal with the welcome blanket is to have a blanket for all incoming immigrants. They want to knit at least 2,000 miles of blanket, which would be the size of the proposed border wall, to show inclusion in our society. So it's a pretty neat project. So I'm going to leave you with these final words from Lisa Ann Auerbach. Stop making scarves, start making trouble.
Hello. All right, hello. I'm Seth Hudson. I teach game writing at George Mason University. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the need for and kinds of reflective practice in digital portfolios all across higher education. All right, so first, our students in game design. Their goals are to get a job, or at least get an edge to get one, in a highly competitive industry. But if we're being honest, They wouldn't mind fame and fortune along the way. They're really passionate about this medium. But our goals as educators, we want to help them do those things, but we're a liberal arts institution. So we want to help their intellectual and personal growth to make them lifelong learners and informed citizens when they leave us. This is tough to do, and we constantly wonder, what should we teach them? Are they actually learning it? And then what are they actually going to do with it? So before I talk about reflection, I want to talk about what it is not. Reflection does not equal a sort of deep, soul-searching, tortured artist finding a voice. And it also does not equal whimsical navel-gazing by students thinking about how great they are. It has to incorporate things like process, products, group dynamics, personal growth, failure, passion, struggle. If we put all of those things together in the portfolio and the work, then we can achieve those goals. But first, I have a story about my best friend. So, when he graduated, he got a great job interview. And at the end, he was asked, well, why should we hire you instead of the other candidates? Famously, his answer was, well, I don't know. I tell this to my students every semester, regardless of their discipline or which class it is, that they bring something to the table beyond the things they make. Their personal identities, their relationships, together with their skills, make them unique. I like to make them what Donald Shern calls reflective practitioners, that along the way they take the tacit knowledge they gain through experience and they make that explicit and accessible. Am I out of frame? I keep coming over here, sorry. All this really means at a simple level is to have students put their schoolwork into context. What are they doing? How do they do it? What are they making and why? What do those things say about them? There are different ways to look at them. And so no two students are really alike. They might have taken the same classes. They might have similar portfolios. But they have a different approach to design. Their philosophies are different. And their identity, everything about them, goes into their work. So I'll meet students or prospective students. I'll say, what are your goals? They'll say, I'm going to work at Blizzard. And I say, awesome, but what do you want to do when you show up for work every day? They don't really know. Authorship is questionable in games, and a lot of young people really want to go make Halo or this big masterpiece, but they have to find out what their role is within that whole process. Now I'm going to do my Yoda impression. Okay, no, I'm not. But so this kind of reflection across the program leads to student empathy. And that shared empathy leads to inclusiveness. And inclusiveness is a goal we should all share, and hopefully one our students can take with them to industry. This culture of practice that focuses on the individual rather than just the product is a great way to enhance the student experience. And again, this is all applied to portfolios. I've written about that a lot. Talk to me. So we have to remember that expression in the collaborative process has greater value than our traditional methods of teaching, no matter how good we think they are. But this also goes for the faculty. You spend more hours alone behind a computer than you do with your students. And even then, it might be in a lecture hall with hundreds of people, maybe like this one. So we have to embrace this too. So students and faculty, we must reflect on our prior knowledge, our assumptions, our biases, our cultural backgrounds, personal identities, and really those higher order skills. What do we bring to the table that we don't necessarily put on a resume or in that portfolio? And we can't forget that our students are creating a narrative in their educational experience. So asking them to talk about these things along the way has way more value, infinitely more, than talking about it once they get ready to graduate. So don't wait. College is long, college is hard, but every day they are growing. And if we take that growth and we think about it and then we show that to the world through their digital portfolios, we will have served our students. Thank you. That's my time.
I am not Colby Tofel-Grehl. She had a family emergency. I'm Debbie Fields, and I am presenting in her place, but I'm using her words on her slides. So She really struggled with finding the right words for this talk to say something in a way people could hear. So much good work is happening in creating new and exciting ways. We have moved the needle, found compelling ways to support diverse learners. We're on the precipice of great change. My fellow researchers frequently ask me, we know this is the best practice, so why won't teachers do it? What is wrong with them? But between the research world and the classroom, there exists a chasm. On one side, we have researchers working hard to develop new approaches. The work is good, it's innovative. In NSF's words, it's transformative. But it lives in after-school programs, museums, and camps, and not classrooms. The world of researchers is not the world of teachers. Teachers are not evaluated on their innovations. They're not hired to transform. They're hired on how well their students perform on standardized tests. High-stakes testing changed everything for teachers. Add to that the pressures at work and the fact that more teachers are taking second jobs. In Texas, 1/3 of teachers have a second job during the school year to pay bills. In Colorado, many teachers are on government support to pay their bills. Teacher burnout is at an all-time high. 8% of teachers leave the profession every year. To quote a friend, we don't have a teacher shortage. We have a high casualty rate from the war on teachers. So how can we engage teachers, honor the limitations of their time and learning while still bringing our best work into schools? We need to align with what we do with how teachers are evaluated. We also need to help teachers manage the load of engaging with new technology. So I'm going to see how many numbers you can remember. Don't write these down. 077-626-398-572-634-011. How many of you got 4 digits? 8? 15? 20? Nope, no 20s, so okay, that's good. No one's lying. Teachers have the same working memory issues that we all do. The way we extend working memory is to put things into familiar scaffolds like our phone numbers. We chunk our phone numbers into small groups, area code, the next 3-digit chunk, and the final 4-digit chunk, which results in not taxing our working memory. In Project Stitch, we train teachers to engage with computing in their core content classes, particularly science. We found out quickly that teachers were avoiding the coding and projects associated with it. As one teacher noted, I can't debug the code and the project at the same time. I am not good enough at either. Because complex e-textiles projects require debugging code at the same time as one identifies construction and physical issues, teachers and students became cognitively overloaded. So we built a fixed scaffold approach for them to learn the projects. They were introduced to core content regarding circuits using rapid prototyping of paper circuits. We provided templates to anchor teachers into using easily replicable models with their students. We then moved them into working with sewable circuits by having them make a sewable parallel circuit. This project allowed them to build off their work with templates they'd done earlier and provided them with a working circuit to explore coding with. Because one of the main challenges with e-textiles is that makers need to debug code and construction simultaneously, we developed something called the bracelet hack to scaffold both of those processes. It acts as the perfect middle step between introductory sewable circuits and computational circuits. And here we have a set of the scaffolds all together that you can see that we developed for our e-textiles in secondary science class. Actually giving you reading time. But scaffolds aren't enough. The teachers also asked us for a defense of their work. What do they say when the principal comes and sees embroidery and not science? So one thing that we did is directly link to core science standards and also to develop projects that meet some of those standards and help give these definitions to teachers so that they have a means to defend the good work that they're doing. It seems superfluous to say, but researchers also need to accept whatever levels teachers are at. When we accept and support teachers who do little more than click and print, we still act as an access point for students. It provides more opportunity for students than if we did not. Accepting teachers where they are at allows us to move them farther along in focusing, rather than focusing on their shortcomings. Thank you.
All right, all right. That was like paltry applause for several amazing presentations. Much better, much better. So if you felt a sense of admiration, fear, adrenaline, maybe hope, then you should plan to do this next year at the Connected Learning Summit at MIT, right? Okay, so dare yourself, take it up, do it. And then the other thing, since most of us, I think, only remember 2 digits, I want you to just take 5 seconds to think about one idea that you heard today during the Ignite talks that you connected to. One idea you connected to. Because they went by really fast, but I want you to hold on to at least one thing that you connected to that you heard during the Ignite talks. And you can take that into the opening reception, which is next. And that can be how you start your conversation with someone that you hopefully are meeting for the first time. So don't just hang out with your homies. Mix it up. There is a tech showcase. It has our opening reception. There's going to be 8 different demonstrations from Veritas, Debug It, Biomaker Lab, Piper, Robo Repair, Mindfield, and the Sweet Talk team that we heard about during Erin's Ignite talk. So it is in Pacific Sea. We hope that everybody will stay for that. And remember what you connected to so you can connect with others around these ideas. One little piece of housekeeping before we go is if you're staying at the Duke Hotel, there's going to be a van and a car at 8:30, and then the van will come back at 8:45. So those of you who are tired can get on at 8:30. Those of you who want to have one more drink can wait. Oh, who's going to be here at 8:45 at night? Okay, sorry. I totally messed it up. Tomorrow, if you're up because you didn't have too much to drink, there's going to be a van and a car at 8:30. If you have to sleep a little bit longer, the van is going to come back for you at 8:45. And if you can't get up, you're just going to have to Uber here, and we'll see you around 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Okay, so Pacific Sea for the opening reception and tech showcase. Thank you very much. Have a good night.